I'm Rob Licuria, Senior Editor at Gold Derby here with Charmaine Bingwa. You know what, Charmaine? I have heard you say that you felt from the moment you read the script, you felt a connection with Dodienne and you were really keen to dive in. Why is that?
Absolutely. I mean, number one, like Bill Coolidge's script, I couldn't put it down. It's such a page turner. And yeah, I just thought she was remarkable, how she was almost like this little oasis in this storm of harrowing things that were going on. And she really kind of felt like the heartbeat of the film for me, and was absolutely this magnet drawing him home. And I had so much admiration for her bravery, and her courage under fire. You know, once Peter is taken from her, she has to do everything to protect her family, and she does.
Absolutely. And it's loosely based on this real life story of Gordon, this whipped, enslaved man, this photograph that became a rallying cry around the world to open our eyes to American slavery. I didn't really know anything about this photograph, to be honest. But I'm really happy, I guess, but I really appreciated the way that William and Antoine gave us this into a story that we've seen before in cinema. How did you feel about that? And did you know about this real life story before you signed on?
Yeah, so I had actually come across, when I was in Australia, I did a production of the play Doubt by John Patrick Shanley, and I came across his photo in preparation for then, because unfortunately slavery influences all the times that come after it, and even though this is set in 1960, its influence is still felt. And so I remember seeing the image and being very struck by it, but I didn't know the story. And I just thought it was so, as you say, so clever the way Antoine and Bill weave together the story. And I think it's very symbolic of what the script aims to say. Even though there's trauma and wounds on his back, like what I see is his dignity. There's like a slight defiance in the way that he's standing, and still has his head held up high. So I just think it's a beautiful symbol, and I think that's why it's been so iconic over decades, over hundreds of years, is because it's a symbol of, like, despite adversity, still we go on.
So true. I found that Emancipation was ultimately empowering in the way that it reveals Black men and women rising up and fighting for freedom after, the first half of the film is so difficult to watch. And I think although it's a quintessentially American story, as an Australian, we're both Aussies. Do you agree that it will, it also resonates worldwide, because this disease of racism and white supremacy and violence and marginalization, that's not just an American thing?
Absolutely. And I felt privileged to be able to be a voice within this story. And I think one thing a lot of people don't know, and I didn't know as an Australian before I started digging into the role, is that at exactly that same time period in Australia, we had our own issues with slavery, because there's a people called the South Sea Islanders who were
Yeah.
taken from the surrounding islands and were tricked and conned into working on their cotton and sugar plantations. So literally, while they're fighting for freedom, other people were being enslaved and in Australia, and continue to be enslaved for the next 50 years. So it's absolutely a universal, like a global problem. So I love Antoine's, and Bill including a Haitian family as well, to tell a story that we may not have seen on screens before.
Yeah, I loved it how Peter and Dodienne and their family were Haitian. I wasn't expecting that either. And speaking of like Australian and European and African and Asian and all the different places where where racism and violence existed, our stolen generations in Australia is something we're still reckoning with. And I hope that some films are made about that, like they're made in the US. Anyway, that's a whole other interview.
Yeah, no, I'd never heard of the South Sea Islanders before, so I
No.
all the stories are made.
It's fascinating. So fascinating. What is it about Antoine Fuqua that you most value and admire as an artist? And you can actually speak to this because you're working with him again.
This is true, and I will follow him around for the rest of my life. um, he works from his soul. He works from such a deeply spiritual and otherworldly place. And he's a strong built guy, but he's not afraid to be vulnerable. Like, there were times, and it's that he treats he inspires right from the top of the cast list all the way through to our background extras. There was a scene where it was the freedom scene. And so he blasted Amazing Grace, Aretha Franklin's version, which I love, on loudspeaker as the soldiers are coming home. I'll never forget it for the rest of my life. And he walked through the crowd of background actors with Peter's image, showing everyone individually, being like, this is who we're doing it for. This is why we're doing it. And he's a beautiful man, and he's openly weeping as he's showing everyone. And like, I would run off a cliff for someone like that. It's he's given me notes that will stay with me for the rest of my days. Like, he is truly, he's the real deal.
I had no idea that happened. That's incredible. Like, there's some real emotion in this scene, like that stunning scene in the film when Dodienne's lullaby kind of wafts over the marches across time and space to Peter. Like, there's something, just the way that Richardson shot it, and the music, but it's so beautiful. And then, of course, that foreshadows that reunion between the two of them in that incredibly climactic, emotional scene. For emotional stuff like that, did it take a lot of takes to get it right, or what was it like on set when the director yelled cut?
And I give massive amounts of praise to our production designer, Naomi Shohan, because you just felt like you were in it. So it never really almost didn't feel like acting, because your surroundings were so real to you. So I don't think it often took a lot of takes. I think we were instantly transported to where our characters were. So I don't think it would all the time. But just a testament to Antoine as well. He's so collaborative. So like the lullaby that you speak of, like that was just something that I made up prior and brought it and just started singing. And he was like, great, do that again. Like, I love it. Like, and so he's collaborative, he's empowering, and there was something about, we just felt we were all very mission led. We felt like we were on this mission together, and he just inspired you to bring your best to it. So I don't think it was a lot of takes kind of film.
Wow. Are you the kind of actor where you leave the set, or even at the end of the shoot, and you feel like if you're doing something difficult or challenging, confronting, that it kind of stays with you, not emotionally, but physically? Like, did you wear a bit of Dodienne after you were done, or are you able to just shrug it off and move on?
Yeah, that I've got a story. It's going to deviate a bit, but I'll come back to the answer, I swear.
Cool.
But I remember a moment where I felt, for me, sometimes there's moments where you feel like you pinpoint the character and you find them. And I, my team is so wonderful. They were like, it's obviously going to be a hard shoot. They got me a voucher for a massage. And I remember I sobbed throughout the whole 90-minute massage. I didn't know I was carrying that. And that was the moment I realized I'd found her, was that I, Charmaine Bingwa, could go and take my emotions somewhere and process them and let them out. But she had nowhere to take her physical, mental, emotional trauma or pain. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is what she lives with every day. But I'm also one of those actors that, like, even being on this press junket, I still feel it physically in my body, and I still feel her presence. But I think she's one of the bravest characters I've ever played, and happy for her to occupy a little space in my soul,
Yeah, absolutely. I think I can think of worse characters that can take up space within you. I love also how the film explores how people cling on to faith even in the darkest times. And for I'm an atheist, but yet I've seen it with people who are quite religious, and I think it affects everyone in different ways. Like, for example, the film opens with Peter washing Dodienne's feet, talking about his faith in God, and Peter also has a conversation about God. And someone snapped back at him, how can you say that? Where is God when you're looking around? And so that makes us think about stuff like that. Did it make you at all? Did it resonate with you personally when you're thinking about the faith aspects that that the filmmakers wanted to bring out in this film?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm probably more non-denominational, but I think I was left changed by the film, because my experience on set, I feel like the ancestors were present. And that's not something that I grew up believing, and you could just feel the presence of spirit or other people or something greater there. So it really just was so intrinsic and became so natural in the film that all the characters, their yearning felt so real, and yeah, it changed me, because I'm like, there just has to be something greater than ourselves out there, and I think that was such a beautiful thing, especially between Peter and Dodienne, that even when they were separated, it felt like there was some pull between them, like they met across space and time.
Yeah, that's one of the highlights of the film. It's one of the strengths of the film, and how that is the whole film's able to capture this connection between the two of them, and they're in completely disparate areas. It's hard to really explain. Actually, I was going to also ask you. I went into the film with an open mind, right? I knew it was going to be confronting. I knew it probably wasn't going to affect me in terms of my personal experience, but that doesn't really matter if you have empathy and you care about people and their struggles. But I wonder, it is bleak. What do you say to people who are concerned that maybe they can't bear to see that kind of struggle and pain in a film like this?
Yeah, like I understand, and there's some hard truths in this film to absorb, but I think we just can't look away. I think that's the message of the film, is that people in those times looked away, and if we do now, we're really doing such a disservice to so many people who gave their lives for later freedoms. I really truly think, especially after working on this film, like, Peter and many of the enslaved people are some of the bravest people to ever walk this earth. And so I just think we owe it to ourselves to honor them, and be uncomfortable for a small part of 2 hours, and pay tribute to these beautiful people who helped to build this country.
Yeah, absolutely. Totally agree with that. If I may, Charmaine, I think one of your strengths, if you don't mind me saying, as an actor is, I reckon you probably hear this all the time. You've got this steely, formidable presence, but we sense underneath that, you're quite composed, unflappable exterior, but underneath you've got this really steely vibe that I really love. You do it a lot as Carmen in The Good Fight. And I
Yeah.
sensed a lot of that in Dodienne. For example, when she wakes from that nightmare partway through the film, you just, I was just like, that is to me a quintessential Charmaine Bingwa performance right there. Is that part of who you are, or is this a quality that you bring to characters just by necessity?
I think it's both, to be honest. Like, I think, I think there's I noticed that a lot of my characters have this sort of survivor trait, and I think
Yeah.
that's in me as well. I'm like, I enjoy being the underdog. I I like to kind of rise to circumstances that are bigger than myself, and I think that's me in life. And also, I think a lot of the characters that I play need that. And but what I'm just so happy about is the breadth of characters that women can be on screen now is becoming very interesting. It hasn't always been like that, where you have this interesting character like a Carmen Moyo, or you
That's
have
right.
empowered woman like Dodienne, and I play a warrior in Antoine's next series as well. So I just it excites me.
How's it going with King Shaka? Are you kind of part way through, or are you in the beginning of shoot? What's going on there?
Yeah, we're about at the midpoint, and we're making some really, really exciting stuff. I can't give too much away, but
No.
we've taken great measures to make sure that we're honoring the culture as we make it, and I think it's going to be quite epic.
What's it like? I mean, you're an expat working overseas. Most of your career, ever since you won the very prestigious Heath Ledger Scholarship in 2018, then you went overseas, built your career over there. Now
Mhm.
you're working in Africa. That's your familial background, even though you were born in Perth. What's that like for you to be away from home, but kind of rediscovering some of your roots from generations past?
Yeah, there was a time I was on set, and I sent my mom a little don't tell Showtime. I sent her a little clip of the set, and there were all these amazing villages and little huts there. And my mom like got teary and was like, "Oh my God, that hut looks like the same one that I grew up in as a little girl with no electricity." And she's like, "It's so weird to me that you're playing my childhood." Like, so I'm not
Yeah.
sure I've figured out in the grand scheme of things what it all means, but there's something going on, and I love the opportunity to get more connected to my my ancestral heritage.
Absolutely. What's it like being an expat working overseas in the US? You built your career there. Like, have you ever looked back and thought, I'd love to work back home one day, or even that's back home, but you know what I mean, back in Oz, or
Yeah.
rather, you know what I mean? What's that like for you?
No, it's it's, I mean, the US has been such an amazing place to really establish your career, but I really absolutely one day want to take all those skills back and use it to empower other people, whether it's being a filmmaker or making content over there. I was talking to a good friend of mine as well, who's another diverse actor from Australia, and we were very excited about just showing on screens what modern Australia looks like. That there are people who do come from other different ethnicities who are Australian, and I think it's an exciting time, and we want to make all the things and just show people the face of modern Australia.
Yeah, I think people like yourself and filmmakers and so forth, there's a real opportunity there to reflect the reality to all of us in other countries as well. If you don't mind, before we go, I need to ask you a couple quick good fight questions, because you may or may not recall that it is one of my favorite shows on earth.
I do remember that, Robert. That's awesome.
And Robert and Michelle King to me are like gods, even though my atheism, despite notwithstanding. So the series finale was literally explosive.
Yeah.
How did you feel about it when you read it, and why do you think that makes a perfect ending for a show like this?
Yeah, and I kind of felt a little bit bad for Robert and Michelle, because I was like, what pressure to end this amazing show that like goes to such unusual places, and how do you end something like that? So I was a little bit not worried for them, because they're geniuses, they they can do it. But when I read it, I was like, oh my gosh, this is so satisfying. Just things that aren't predictable, but still making sure that Diane Lockhart had a nice journey. So it felt good reading it. I think they did a great job, and it was very like emotional for all of us to film.
Oh, I can imagine.
Yeah.
And then final question is, we learned a lot about Carmen's personal life and some hints about her past. What was your favorite character detail that you discovered about her?
I loved that it was my daddy went door knocking for Malcolm X and all of those types of civil rights movements, and he sent us broke, so I'm not doing that. And that's the reason for being. I was not expecting that, and I was like, Robert and Michelle, you guys are geniuses.
It's so typical of them. Well,
Yeah.
Charmaine, it's been such a pleasure. Congrats on a beautiful performance as Dodie Ann, and good luck with this whole emancipation journey.
Thank you so much, Robert. So good to finally talk to you.